Okay.
Hello. So, I always found the women of Sparta really interesting because they didn't care. They got to own land. They got to do all the stuff that other women couldn't do in other countries back in the ancient world. So that's why I chose this topic. Um, your hand. Okay, so where to say that? Aristotle, the author of the passage that I chose. He lived like 384 to 322 BC. So I forgot to map that out and see how old he actually was. Does someone want to pull that up on the calculator, see how old he actually was? Audience participation?
62.
He was 62? Okay, so he lived a pretty good life. Um, Contributed to philosophy, logic, metaphysics, mathematics, physics, biology, botany, ethics, politics, agriculture, medicine, dance, and theater. The last two I found really interesting. I knew about philosophy and mathematics pretty much. I think everyone kind of knows that. But botany might be a little less known, but dance and theater, I mean, he was into a lot of things. He influenced a lot more of our world than I think we give him credit for. Of the possible 200 treaties he wrote, only 31 survived the effects of time. So, how did only 31 survive? Did they just not keep records of it? But, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Um, Thomas Iniquus referred to him as simply the philosopher. And I think that, I'm big into grammar. And I love the way people word things. So, saying the philosopher means he's the only one. He is above his time. So I think that word there just adds a lot of emphasis. Socrates taught Plato, Plato taught Aristotle. Aristotle actually rejected Plato's ideas. So when he taught him, he just pushed it to the side and went on his own thing. And I think Aristotle's actually a little more well known than Plato. He started his own school in 335 called the Lyceum. So there was one school already, and he just made another one for philosophy. The text. So your handout that you have is the entire text because it was pretty short. But on the screen is just what we'll be going over and what is underlined on your paper. For husband and a wife, being each part of every family, the state may be considered as about equally divided into men and women, and therefore in those states in which the condition of the women is bad, half of the city may be regarded as having no laws. And this is what actually happened at Sparta. The legislator wanted to make the whole state hardy in temperature, and he had carried out his intention in the case of men. But he has neglected the women, who live in every sort of impotence and luxury. The consequence that in such a state wealthy is try that again. The consequence is that in such a state wealth is too highly valued, especially if the citizens fall under the dominion of their wives, after the manner of most warlike races, except for the Celts and a few others who openly approve of male loves. The old mythologer would seem to have been right in uniting Ares and Aphrodite, for all the warlike races are prone to love each other of men of women. This was exemplified among the Spartans in the days of their greatness. Many of the things were managed by their women. But what difference does it make whether women rule? The rulers are ruled by women. The result is the same. Sorry, I stumbled there. And it blocked out the last question. Okay, so key points. Governments almost divided equally between men and women. They tried to divide it up that way because half and half. That way it was pretty equal. What's the difference if a man or a woman rules? The same thing happens. It's the same thing gets accomplished. It really doesn't matter. War and love, and I think the last point mentioned that they go hand in hand. With one, you have to have the other. Questions. So, what are some things other than philosophy that Aristotle contributed to? Yes. Male versus female rule. What's the difference in the end result? And whose idea did Aristotle reject, and why do you think that's important?
Human.
Yes.
Plato's.
And why is that important?
It's important because Plato had a view that everything inductive or deductive. It's deductive, right? Deductive view. Plato.
Deductive. Plato.
And a deductive view where he took general truths to get to particular truths. But Aristotle went the other way around, which kind of gets us closer to the scientific method, which is the inductive.
Okay.
I
And
wonder, I kind of wonder about our interpretation of male versus female, that passage, that line.
yeah, I think
When I read it, I kind of got a different idea. The idea is that the women are going to run everything anyway, whether we say they're running it or not. That was my. In other words, it says, where's it at? The consequence in such a state, wealth, is too highly valued, especially if the citizens fall under the dominion of their wives, after the manner of most warlike races. All right, and then it says, but what difference does it make whether women rule or the rulers are ruled by women? The result is the same. So I think what he's saying, maybe I'm wrong, is that the women end up running things whether we say they're the ruler or not. The women really are the rulers.
yeah, I think I misunderstood it the first time I read through because I got certain things and just.
But in the end,
Yeah.
It's like in some situations, that you talk to somebody and they say, well, go talk to my wife, and it's kind of left up.
Yes.
Not saying they necessarily rule everything.
Yes.
Go ahead.
What do you think of the kind of talk about warlike cultures are usually like homosexual, of what he's trying to say about that?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Is he trying to think that in a negative light or a positive light?
The old mythologer, I'm not sure who that is, would seem to have been right in uniting Ares and Aphrodite. So these are the god of war and the god of love. Okay, so love and war, so they go in together. For all warlike races are prone to love either of men or of women. Exemplified among the Spartans in their day of greatness, many things were managed by the women. And then you're saying up above, it's also has this. The matter most warlike races except the Celts and a few others who openly approved of male loves. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Because really we're talking about not just men and women, but we're talking about husbands and wives, right? In other words, that role. It says that being a part of every family, the state may be considered about equally divided into men and women, so population-wise 50-50. Therefore, in those states which the condition of the women is bad, half of the city may be regarded as having no laws. So we have laws, but they don't apply to the women. They don't treat the women. The women aren't being fairly treated under the law, so it's like they don't have any law. That's the way I read it. And this is what has actually happened at Sparta. The legislator wanted to make the whole state hardy and temperate, and he has carried out his intention in the case of the men, but has neglected the women, who live in every sort of intemperance and luxury. So, Spartans were famous for being Spartan. I mean, for having a Spartan lifestyle, which means they don't have any luxury. They had terrible food. Anybody who went there just talked about like the wall. Well, I like the walls in here. Nothing on the walls. No art, no decoration. A functional bed. Everything was very functional. Nothing was there for pleasure or luxury or beauty. It's just function. But this seems to end. He seems to be saying here that the women live in every sort of luxury. I guess I'd have to look.
Well, it says in the next part too. It says he compares it to the Lycedonian women.
Yeah.
And he says that when they were given the same kind of freedom and then also given the discipline of soldiers, but then they revolted against it. Said that they didn't want to live under a soldier's law.
Rules, yeah.
And so they revolted against it, and then he says at the end there, as I've already said, He's like, we are not, however, considering what is to be excused or not excused, but what is right or wrong. The disorder of women, as I have already said, not only gives an air of indecorum to the Constitution considered in itself, but tends in a measure to foster happiness.
Tends to make greed. Huh? Yeah. That's actually, this is the license of the Lacedaemonian women defeats the intention of the Spartan constitution and is adverse to the happiness of the state. Interesting. So it seems to me like he is trying to draw a kind of parallel here, right, between the way the women are living, the way the state is, the fairness of that, but also the problems that it causes. But when, like Kyrgyz sisters, they wanted to bring the women under his laws, they resisted, and he gave up the attempt. So, like Kyrgyz was the guy who reorganized Sparta into a military state. Very interesting. Any other thoughts on this? I mean, I think this we have to ponder this a little bit more. And but you're saying this is the whole passage we have here.
The handout is the whole passage. Yeah. But it was pretty short, so.
I'm gonna let Jamin continue to ponder on that.
And see you on Jeopardy.
See me on Jeopardy?
Whoever went out of the water.
No, I don't know. I do like watching it on what I call the TV.
Yeah, that's
You got everything? Okay.